Hello and welcome back. This is NIE update number 8. This is actually an official update. It's not a half update like we've done before, because character N is now done. It's done to the same level that all the other characters are. We also have a bunch of other hotkeys. Namely, right there, I can press M and I can mute and unmute the sounds, which is really easy and really less annoying if you're playing with sounds. This is the main reason why it took so long, is because for the sake of all the block animations, we also had to create a skeleton that I wanted to use. There is some glitches every once in a while where the character will spring up really high in the air because of it, but it's also the only one with an intro animation to them using their block. So that's kind of cool. But since block is on a trigger, you can just do that whenever. We tried putting jump on a trigger for a second, and that just did not work. This character also, let me just maximize the screen, has the ability of a double jump. So that is their air special ability. This is their walk animation. Attack animation, boom, they hit you with it, they fly towards you, bomb. The farther back they hit you from, the higher stun it has, so it takes longer for you to be able to block. And since block is on a trigger now, which it might have been before, but since block is on a trigger, you can just hold down block. And once you're able to block, you'll be able to. So if you're closer per se, you'll be able to block much sooner afterwards, rather than if you were doing it from very far away. Additionally, with this jump ability, with this animation of just spinning, it gets faster based on the number of jumps you've done, which in this case is only ever 2 jumps. And then this is the idle animation, just a little hand waving, head turning scenario. But we've also added some other things, and as you can see, this is the low poly mode, which doesn't look too much different. Skeleton is also low poly, which is maybe a bit more noticeable if we get closer up. I'm debating making the camera just closer in general. I'm not entirely sure if I will, though, but that's always an option. Beat them into vector form. So, idle animation, walk animation, block animation, same whole scenario where it's like, oh, I can stop this at any time. Also, you can kind of just teabag with this character, which became an accidental and fun consequence. But due to the kind of positioning of the block animation, if you're walking, you kind of just perfectly go into it, which is really cool. Once again, the whole same situation was jumping. And as you can see, there's that weird loading issue, which just kind of seems like it's always going to be here for 2D. Maybe it's because we're in editor mode and that's just a thing. It has to take a little bit longer to load in some of the animations when it's actively using them. Attack animation maybe has a bit more range, but we kind of fixed a little bit of the range issue. I made some actual nerfs to it just earlier to where it is a little bit less fast and it does not go as far, so it should be more accurate. There's also a lot of weird stuff going on with that where I've set it up to go further if you're like going forward with it. So it still matches where your fist is at the animation, because if you're not 3D, it doesn't attach your fist. If you're 3D, oh shoot, I pressed a button. That's going to give us a bunch of errors because I accidentally went into a debug mode, which does not help us at all. But if you're using this animation in 3D, a bunch of projectile spheres just attached to your fist. They're not projectiles, they're just spheres that can attach to your bone, and then they'll make context if they've been hit, if they hit something. This form, however, has to shoot a projectile, so we have a specific stun projectile made for that, because the entire point of this is it has like no hit back, but it stuns the enemy. From there, we've already shown all the animations for this one. Let's go ahead and bring us down to high pixel. Yes, we do have hotkeys now for low pixel, high pixel, vector, low poly, and high poly, and we have them for each of them separately. This way, we don't really run into any issues, kind of just figuring out who we want to test things on, rather than having to bring, let's say, because we wanted to testing at low pixel, they're both only at 20% health, and that's kind of risky. So it's much more helpful to have one be higher up and one of them not be. So I gotta see the high pixel though. Walk animation, block animation, same scenario. Realistically, a lot of the same frames too. It's the same frames across all pixel forms and vector forms, just a little bit more or less dynamic with a lot of the angles that are available to it. Attack animation. I actually do really like it in this form. Boom. It's definitely the most complex attack because it has a lot of things like, oh, did we hit? If we hit, we launch the character really far. If not, we don't. Boom. Oh, that's interesting. That it doesn't quite hit even at this rate. Interesting. Interesting. I'll have to do some double checks on that. And then we go down to low pixel form, walk animation. Oh, we didn't show the jump animation, which is the same thing, but it looks a bit better in pixel form because you're just spinning in vector form, spinning. That's rather funny to me. And then we had to create some alpha graph, animation graph nodes so you can go into attack from it. Notably, once you're attacking, you cannot move. That is a good thing to note. Notably, if you hit the opponent, you actually cancel that. So I don't think you can move. Maybe you can but it's already you can. It's just you're getting launched forward usually if you hit the opponent. If you hit the opponent, the most useful thing you can do though is you can jump right afterwards. So potentially air combos just later on in the future. Though gravity at this moment would still be affecting the enemy if you hit them in the air. And then you're gonna lead to fun scenarios like that where both of you guys are just in heavy stun. But yeah, walk animation, block animation, attack animation. Character N is exactly where they need to be. And we have some slight character customization available. Not customization. We have this. Oh boy. What is this? I don't know what we just got. But we'll ignore that wall of errors. Because a lot of it is just from going into a different mode. F11. Boom. We do have a little bit of customization available to us. Nothing too good, but it works. So if you pressed onto this, make it V actually does something. Oh, that's cool. If you press the same button twice, it actually puts you back to where you were before. That's really good. Alright, we don't have anything for B. Move backwards, make that B instead. Okay then. B. Oh, I see, I pressed the wrong buttons. Because I accidentally right now have C and V being ways to try to bring up different charts. And it just does not work. Because I have like 3 sets of controls in this, so a lot of the video tutorials don't exactly compute with what my thing needs to do. So make that B, press C again. I can no longer press A to go backwards, no matter how much I try, but now I can press B. If I press C again, though, I believe it does just reset them, which is kind of weird. So there needs to be a way to save them in the future. Though this is also isn't how we want our controller customization to be if we have it in the game anyway, which we for sure will for at least keyboard. But we also have it to where you can press buttons, so instead of attack 1 being that, we will make it top button. Hello? There we go. Top button. I see, it's probably only getting input from player 1. Yeah. Alright, so now we press top button. As my controller is still corded up, but like it is what it is. Press top button rather than bottom button. Because the plan at the end of the day is for there to be 4 attacks for each person and an out-of-block attack as well. So each person will have a jab of sorts, and then 3 attacks kind of just unique to them. Like this character has their long stretchy punch, and then they'll have a really rapid jab that will probably end with an attack from the skeleton. Their out-of-block attack will be like using the skeleton and jamming it forward. And some of the other ones I still need to figure out, as well as I want each character to have a super. I also have a bunch of stages, a bunch of screens I need to make, a bunch of menus. There's a lot that still needs to be done with this game, obviously. Is this one just not connected? Interesting. How bizarre. Normally this works. Maybe it's a matter of not having enough inputs because normally we have something weird detecting that. Let's see if we do that. Disconnect that. reconnect that. If not, we just won't worry about it for now, but yeah, this thing is always being weird, like, oh, add mapping context. We have mapping context added. I just don't know why it's trying to be weird about it. Because it's all working. Like, it's not saving, but then again, we don't have code as far as I'm aware to actually save the mapping context back into itself. Move this, first player, second player, cool. It is just a weird number of inputs thing, so there needs to be better coding for adding that. Oh, how bizarre! You can actually grab your correct thing! So it has all the player 2 stuff. No, that's normally there, isn't it? Yeah. Even if I use this one, or if I use this one. I also have it set up on the triggers. Well, at least on the left trigger. Either way, character customization's there, sort of, but it needs to be better, and it's just going to be a page on a menu screen rather than being something you can summon up like that, because it's not working correctly at the moment, and we're probably just going to need like more communication with the game like state in general. So, but yeah, that is all that shenaniganery. We also have just like a lot of UI mapping now, so we have all these different key selectors based on categories, and then a key select list that they'll be added to as children. Because when you go in here, it kind of creates it creates a for loop. You go in here, woof. Oh, that's right, it's this to drag around. Where'd my mouse go? I gotta disconnect the controllers because otherwise they're gonna be funky. There we go. Cool, cool. So yeah, as you go through, you kind of go through and you're like, oh, from the mappings that we have for each loop, create a keyboard widget being a keyboard one selector. If the category is player one keyboard, if that's true, then add it to the scroll box. If it's P1 controller, add it to the scroll box. If it's P2 keyboard, add it to the scroll box. If it's P2 controller, add it to the scroll box. And that's where things are at right now. We also have it for a second mappings that hasn't quite been working, though there are probably other ways around it, probably other ways to get to it. And honestly, I'm just probably have to create something a bit more manual to make it work as a main menu screen, not menu screen, but a selection screen rather than what it is currently where it's something you summon. But that is the game at the moment. Player N is fully playable. I went to go play on my controllers again, even though they are not attached anymore. But yeah, they are functional. Obviously, they're not like super good characters because they only have one attack, which is kind of meant to be their setup attack. But next things of order are probably just getting a relatively working main menu, a working character select screen, and potentially CPU controls so you can fight the computer rather than having to fight yourself or fighting someone else. And I'm looking forward to potentially releasing what I would call a super alpha version, basically meaning they're all still going to only have their one attack, so they're not going to be that good. But you can play around the game, you can see if you like the dynamics of it. I don't think I'll have any other maps included. I might have like one more included if I really get around to it. But I want to just see this game and if it's fully functional or not. And if I'm really lucky, I can add the online to that super alpha because I've already seen some pretty good tutorials on how to add that for Steam. Though ideally, you'd kind of want the super alpha to also be available on something like Itch rather than just Steam. But it is what it is, and if it works, it works. That's just kind of the life of coding a little bit. And the fun thing of these, I also don't know why this gives me errors. I'm at the point now with this coding where it's like it's giving me errors that aren't affecting the game at all. And it's like, oh, it's but not valid for pending kill or garbage. And it's at the attached to component section, so it's right here. I'm not sure if it's because it already has one or what the deal is. You go in here, mesh, get socket, goes there, stun projectile, transformations, match. socket name, skeleton right hand socket, skeleton right hand socket, attach. Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure what the issue is, honestly. Like maybe it's because it's not a variable. Like it's not being turned into a variable and then attached. That's the only thing I could think of. But it's still attaching, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on. It is what it is, honestly. All this is still working and functional. There's been some other updates, probably certain things like floating abilities for other characters. But the important thing today was A, we have our characters working. We got the new one here. We have a little bit of character customization, controller customization available. Nine's making good progress. And hopefully by update 9, we have a relatively functional base game. Not even anywhere close to the full game, because there's so much more I want to add, as well as obviously just so many more attacks and abilities. But a relatively functional game where you could technically download it and you could technically play with it. Ooh, that reminds me, we also need to add at least the thing where you need to win 2 rounds to actually win a game rather than it just being like an infinite scenario like it is right now. Because right now, if you're down to low pixel form and you die, it just reloads the level, which isn't horrible for testing, but for an actual game, obviously that's just not functional. And then potentially a timer. So there's a lot of UI updates that need to be made. Yeah, that is the current state of the game. I'm just relatively ignoring those errors at the moment because they aren't actually affecting anything yet. And because 4 of them are just loading the controls. But the thing is, when you're doing a lot of this stuff, like it's like, oh, it's access none. That's kind of the point. It's you want to do it until the length is not 0, so you just delay it till the next tick and loop it back into itself. So that error might be something intentional because I followed a video to get this all to work, and it is working. So I'm not sure what the issue is because it's weird when it says there's an error, but there's not obvious actual error because the thing works. Maybe there is an actual functional error if you have it downloaded as an actual game rather than just playing it in the editor, but that is neither here nor there until I create the super alpha version for a little bit of play testing and whatnot, just to see if it all is working correctly so far. Anyway, I will see you guys next time. Have a wonderful day.